Our next guest is a voting rights attorney. Richard Bell is with us now. Good to see you, Richard.
Thank you, Jennifer, for having me.
Well, as we know, we have all been watching the events very closely that have been developing while people are voting, of course. You have been an electoral poll monitor, a legal analyst, we said attorney. Now, a number of roles in this landscape. As we just heard in Alexandra Limon's story, some people concerned about what she called self-appointed poll watchers going beyond peaceful observations. A big focus right now as well, right, as you look at voting rights?
Oh, yes, I would call them election vigilantes. They're criminals because essentially they are committing crimes whenever you intimidate or threaten poll workers or voters. That's both a federal crime and in Pennsylvania it's a crime as well.
What do you encourage people to do when it comes to exercising their rights amid these types of concerns?
Okay, number one, we don't live in fear. We are not going to allow threats to get in the way of an election, a very important election, as a matter of fact. And I tell people my first 3 rules of voting: early, early, early. So if you're voting in person, get there early. You can rectify errors if you get there early. If you have a mail-in ballot, I would put it in a drop box at this point. I wouldn't really trust the mail. It's getting kind of late for that. I would also remind people about the importance of voting. Voting is the right from which all other rights derive. Voting, it turns anger into action. It turns ideas into laws. I would go back and name many people may not know Vernon Dahmer Sr. Mr. Dahmer was a civil rights activist in Mississippi in the 60s. He was murdered by the Klan in 1966 for protecting voting rights for African Americans. And on his epitaph is, "If you don't vote, you don't count." And I would say that says it all.
You have been a poll watcher, as we just said. What are some of the rules surrounding that, and are there laws protecting election officials?
Oh, absolutely. So first of all, the rules. So let's go with Pennsylvania, of course. It's different by state. So there's inside poll watchers and outside poll watchers. Inside, these individuals are certified by the county. They're appointed by a party. They're allowed 1 per poll per party. And there's some very specific rules. Those people cannot come within 6 feet of a voter. They cannot in any way threaten, confront, or intimidate a voter. They cannot ask voters for any kinds of documentation. They cannot block a voter in any way or give false information to a voter. And there will be an election judge in your polling place, and if a voter's right to vote is challenged based on registration or other aspects of voting or age, things like that, it better be a good faith basis, because that's what the law says, and it cannot be based, of course, on race or national origin or how somebody looks, appearance. And for outside poll workers, it's the same thing, except we have to stay 10 feet away from the polling place, cannot interfere in any way, and can certainly not give misinformation to voters.
We've got just a brief time left here, and I wanted to just talk about, you're encouraging young people in particular to know about the voting process. Why did you start this initiative of Voting for Beginners? You say it's nonpartisan.
Yes, votingforbeginners.com. It's my way of creating both an entertaining and a very educational, practical, nonpartisan 10-episode series on things that young people need to vote or first-time voters need to know. And it's basically a primer on who's eligible, how to vote, how to register, how to get great information, nonpartisan information on the web and by phone. And it's real simple. I tell voters, I wrote a book, Voting the Ultimate Act of Resistance, and what I mean by that is it keeps our democracy strong and healthy when you vote. It keeps our politicians responsive to us when you vote. And we all need to remember, for much of our history, African Americans, women, Native Americans were not allowed to vote. So we better respect it, and we better exercise our right.
Richard Bell, thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Go out and vote.